Take a moment and think about your anxiety. We often think of anxiety as a mind thing. But what if I said it's impacting your heart? What if your anxiety is creating an energetic wall that is causing a disconnection between you and the people that you care about? We often talk about anxiety when it comes to romantic relationships, causing a disconnection and a fear of being hurt. But what if it's impacting all of your relationships? I can share a story of my grandson, Sai, and he was born just 3 weeks after my daughter, Maya, died. And yes, I was in shock and I didn't really connect with him in that first year. But it actually took 3 years to where it hit me one day. And I would outwardly interact with him. It wasn't like I wasn't superficially connecting. But I realized 3 years later that I had not actually attached to this little boy. You see, that anxiety, that fear for me of getting close to anyone when my heart hurt so much created a disconnection. And so I want you to take a moment and think about your anxiety and how it's impacting your relationships. My name's Dr. B. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner with over 20 years of clinical experience. But I've also raised 7 children, lost children in drowning accident, and 2 to a rare neurodegenerative condition, and also lost my husband. So I understand grief and trauma and anxiety, and I am determined to take my pain and figure it out so that I can share it with you. I teach what's called the Mentally Strong Method, and it comes down to just these 3 words: think, organize, choose. And you're like, well, my anxiety is not that simple, right? You're probably starting to think about all the things that you're anxious about, and you may even feel like you have no control over the anxiety, that maybe it takes over your body. I understand that feeling, but I'm also here to empower you that you can manage and take control of some of that anxiety and bring it into a place of function, relationship, connection with not only your romantic partner, but also with the people around you, new relationships, old relationships, right? Because that anxiety creates a wall. So what do we do with that? I want you to think for a second, and I teach this think, organize, choose, and the first step is this thought map. And we'll go and we'll put anxiety in the middle. But I want you to think about what makes you anxious now. I bet you're listing external things. Maybe your relationship with your kids. Your kids don't talk to you about their problems. They go to their dad. Or, your husband is feeling disconnected. Or you're not attending family events, or you're embarrassed to attend family events or work events or social events. I missed one really big event in my family several years ago. Maya was still alive, Bundu was still alive, and I made some excuses to not go. And I still regret it, right? Like those moments of, big family gatherings and social events and connection, we could really be missing out. So there was another big event just recently in my family, and I was determined not only to be there physically, but to be all in emotionally, mentally, and really connect with people. And I'm so glad I did, but it's not easy. So oftentimes in our mind, we just list all the reasons we can't. I don't want to talk about my sick child. I don't want to talk about the fact that my husband's in a wheelchair, right? Like, so sometimes the things that we're anxious about are stopping us from connecting with other people. And so as you sit here and think about your anxiety, what are you anxious about right now? I also want you to think about what's made you anxious in the past and maybe all the way into your childhood, because there's often patterns of fear that come from life experiences. So obviously my fear of connecting with my grandchildren has to do with my grief of losing children, right? That pain is so unimaginable and difficult that I'm afraid. I'm afraid to love others like I loved my children. And so, it's way more complicated than the list of things that you're anxious about right now. So when we learn to think through, where is this anxiety coming from? What are the different components? So, obviously in my story, it's grief and trauma. But what if you're having trouble connecting with your child? And you're like, well, they connect so much better with their dad. I'm having trouble. They never come to me with their problems. Stop and think about that for a moment. Is there other times in your life that you have felt disconnected from someone that you wanted to connect with directly? That's like an injury to your emotional health, right? Some people call it trauma. But even small things that have happened to you impact how you connect and what you believe about that connection. So someone came to me recently talking about this very same situation with her children and really wanting to connect with them. And she spends a lot of time with them. She does a lot of things for them, and they love her. This is a healthy, functional mother-child relationship. But what was it actually going on in her head? That she didn't believe that she was a good mother. She didn't believe that she was worthy of love from her children, which was manifesting as feeling a disconnection, right? So it wasn't just a task of, I need to do something specific to connect with my children. Sometimes it's taking a deep breath and taking care of ourselves. What are the patterns in our life that we need to figure out so that we show up in relationships aware and insightful of what's going on in our heart and how our anxiety is impacting our heart? Click the link below. There's a worksheet called The Mentally Strong Brain. And it just talks about how we often either put things into little boxes and try to put them away, or everything is emotionally connected and it feels like chaos. And really, a mentally strong brain is being able to think, I'm going to say these words again, think, organize, and choose. So efficiently thinking, knowing where the feelings are coming from, but then organizing them, right? Because think about my story and then think about your story, right? Your anxiety, what's causing it now? What's caused it in the past? Did you ever feel anxious in your childhood? What are your patterns? My patterns have to do with grief, obviously. The trauma of what I went through is like this: no matter how hard I try to save my children, to be a good mom, I failed, right? And that turns into negative self-talk. Do you ever sit around when you're talking about what you're anxious about and you're trying to figure out how to identify and work through this anxiety, but you find yourself just beating yourself up, saying all the things that, no one else would say to you, you wouldn't say to your friend, but here you are in a quiet space saying these negative things to yourself. And I've been there. I'm a bad mother, I'm not smart enough. If I would have just tried harder, then I would have been able to save my children, right? But if I'm honest, it goes all the way back to my childhood of like not really being good in school, not being enough, really searching for connection and love. And so knowing your patterns is what it means to organize. And then when you organize, you're doing different things for like your grief, right? And I have lots of videos on what to do with grief, a whole playlist, right? But your trauma needs to be released from the body. Anxiety is a continuum. You're supposed to be anxious. I lost a child in a drowning accident. Do you think I can go to a river and not be constantly looking around and making sure that people are safe? That is a normal response. But if I were to begin to have a panic attack, be screaming at people who are trying to have a good time, that would be severe panic anxiety, and it's impeding function. But it's okay to be mildly anxious in dangerous situations, right? That is a normal response to what I have experienced. And so don't think of your anxiety as a bad thing that you need to get rid of. One of the verses in the Bible that I hate the most is the one that says, do not be anxious about anything. Because anxiety is a biological response. But we have gotten into this place where we're in chronic anxiety and we just keep feeding it. So anxiety is like a campfire. If you pour gasoline, lighter fluid, more logs into a fire, it's going to continue to grow. But if you take a hose or you put sand on the fire, it will begin to snuff out. That's what we need to do with our anxiety. We need to bring it down to a manageable level, feed it things that are positive, that decrease the anxiety. I know if you're still watching, you have been in what I call a spiral, right? You're anxious about something, you're thinking about it, you're going and you just keep saying those things over and over and over again. I want you to imagine when you're doing that, when you're spiraling, you're actually putting gasoline on that anxiety. I want you to stop, take a deep breath. What can I do to just bring it down? Because what often people will say, well, don't be anxious. You can't be anxious. Well, as soon as I tell you don't be anxious, that makes you more anxious. So don't think of getting rid of it altogether. Can you decrease its intensity? And I know that you can. But it's also important when you're organizing to organize the other components to where that anxiety is coming from. Do you have grief? Do you have trauma, injury, things from your past that you have really not processed through and let go? It is important to take the time to do that. Now, it is a life journey. It's not you just sit down for a couple hours and release all your trauma. That's not realistic, right? But as we go on this journey of trying to manage our anxiety, being able to be real with yourself of what is actually going on, where are these things coming from, and then making a choice. I can tell you, I work with a lot of people who have lost children, and they begin to disconnect. And they don't feel like they have any friends, even their family feels strained. That is their heart, their broken heart, the anxiety causing that disconnect. So my challenge is to connect, which I know is the hardest thing for someone with anxiety. Because you're afraid. You're afraid that you can't handle one more thing. And I understand that. And as I'm trying to grow in my relationship with my grandchildren, I think of that also. Like, what's going to happen next? And will I be able to handle it? But your anxiety will not stop the next good or bad thing. Whether you can experience it, whether you can handle it, is whether we are learning those skills to actually think through our problems, organize them, and make choices. So when I say make choices, a choice for your anxiety is learning to manage it, choosing to connect with people even when it's hard. That's what I mean when I say choice. We are only in control of our own reactions to our environment. And the way that we show up and the way that we can process and maybe even help other people brings in that mental strength that I talk about. The Mentally Strong Method is this formula that you can learn to take care of yourself. Subscribe to my channel, continue watching. Lots of really good content. Click the link, get the worksheet, your Mentally Strong Brain.